going, you guys? It's Marshall here, and this is my 92 Acura NSX. And it's been about 6 years since I bought this car, and I'm just about ready to let go of her and post her for sale. So I thought there wouldn't be a better time to make this video for you guys and give you guys a little bit of insight on this car that only an owner would know. So I think the first thing we have to start off with is the styling of this car. It's my favorite part of the car, and it's probably yours as well. And the car just features these classic lines, right? Has classic proportions. It has a low roof line. This car sits super low. The car is very long and it's extremely wide. So it just gives that nice squat and that nice stance. And there's no over-the-top styling on this car, nothing to really make it look dated. It just flows very nicely, and I think every single year this car just looks better and better as time goes on. However, there's a few things on this car in stock form that really date the car and make the car look older than it needs to. And when you update these, it really takes the car to that new modern look. So I think the one thing that really dates this car the most are the stock wheels on this car. So this car actually comes double staggered, which means 16s in the rear and 15-inch tire wheels in the front. And the stock wheels on this car, I think for any NSX owner, it's probably the first thing that you should change out on this car, and it really updates the look. So on my car, I opted for what I consider like the RPF1 of the NSX. It's the basic bitch wheel, as I like to say. It's the Advan Model 5s. It's actually a discontinued wheel. I went with the 17-inch wheels in the front, and then on the rears, I went with the 18-inch wheel. It's the more preferable setup. It's going to be an 18-17 double staggered setup on this car. Some people run an 18-19. You can also choose to run just a staggered setup with 18s all around or 17s all around, whatever you prefer. However, when you do that, for some reason, the lines on this car, when you put 18s in the front and 18s in the rear, the wheels up front look unusually large, and you really want to get one size smaller wheel in the front, because when you look at the car as a whole, there's something about the lines and the proportions of this car that really look off if the car doesn't have a double staggered setup, and the front tires just end up looking really big. So one of the main issues for people like me when you're looking at wheel setups is that the front fenders of this car can really only fit a 215 tire, and it's really hard to fit an aggressive wheel. So when you're looking at wheels like TE37s and other wheels like that, where you really want to get that concave, aggressive rim up front, you run into some difficulties when fitting. However, there's sort of a lot of aftermarket support on this car, so you can buy wider fenders in the front. But just know, with the stock fender on this car, you can really only fit a 215, and it gets really hard to run an aggressive wheel up front. The other thing about this car is in stock form. As you guys know, this car was the first aluminum production body car, and the stock fenders being aluminum, it's kind of risky to get someone to roll and pull them, as the material is a lot more delicate and people are way less familiar with rolling and pulling that type of metal, right? So your best bet is just to buy some downforce fenders or some wide body front fenders for this car if you want to run a wider setup. You don't really want to mess with rolling the stock fenders being aluminum, and also the stock fenders are pretty pricey themselves, so you don't really want to mess those up. So now here's the second thing on a stock form NSX that really bothered me, and it's probably something you've never noticed. It's something I never noticed before I bought the car, but then after someone pointed it out to me, I couldn't not look at it every time, and that is the stock placement of the side markers. So on the NA Acura NSX models, they came with this massive amber side marker here, and it's something you'll never notice if you don't own the car, but after you're made aware of it, it's something you can't ignore every time you look at it, and it's just a massive eyesore. So these are actually carbon fiber JDM versions of the front fenders. So most importantly, the side marker placement is moved from the front to right here, and there are these nice small clean side markers, and it really makes the car have a nice sleeker look. So in the front of the car, we have the iconic pop-up headlights, and there's nothing more 90s than a nice flip-up headlight. However, the car really shows its age in stock form when you flip these bad boys up and you got halogen light bulbs in there. So you're gonna wanna swap those out, get an HID projector kit. It can be a little pricey, but there's nothing like being able to see and really bringing the car to sort of that modern day era with some lights that actually allow you to see where you're going at nighttime. All right, you guys, so moving to the rear half of the car. There's not much on a stock form NSX that really needs to be changed. The only thing that kind of would bother me or kind of dates the car a little bit, especially on these older NA1 models, is this rear valence or the rear half bumper. In stock form, it looks a little bland, and the O2 Plus, so this is just the updated NSX year model in 2002 with the fixed headlights, but they gave it this nicer looking rear valence here. It really kind of completes the look, and it modernizes the lines a little bit in my opinion, and especially with here, how I have it with the carbon fiber, it really sort of updates the car and gives it that modern day look that the car sort of deserves. The other thing about this car is being it's from the 90s stock, they come with one of those metal antennas that sort of travel all the way up the car when you want to listen to the radio. So I've put on just the S2000, what we call a shark antenna on here, you know, make it look better. No longer have that, you know, that completely dated 90s metal antenna sticking 20 feet outside of my car. Another interesting thing to note is that this, on the Acura models, actually comes with an Acura logo and Acura badge here. However, this is not just a badge that you can pull off of the car and replace with a Honda one. It's actually integrated into the center taillight piece here. And as you guys can see, it also features the keyhole for where you put your key in to open up the trunk. So you can't just go in, buy a Honda badge, slap that on, and take the Acura one off. This is actually a pretty hard to come by center taillight piece, and it's the entire piece itself that has to be replaced. The other thing that's interesting about it, right, is as you can see, this center taillight piece is actually a little bit darker than my taillights here. And that's gonna be because they're actually, the Honda or JDM NSXs come with these tinted taillights in this color, and the entire bar here is actually gonna be in this tinted color, whereas the US ones came in this untinted, full clear taillights, as you guys can see. The other place on this car where you see the Acura logo is actually going to be in the interior on the steering wheel. And people will actually pay an exorbitant amount of money, believe it or not, just to have that Honda logo on the steering wheel airbag. I've had two myself, and they sell relatively quickly from anywhere between $600 to $700 depending on the condition. Interesting thing about the styling here is that the only place that this car actually says NSX anywhere is right here on the window sort of door panel, as you guys can see. And that's actually where the door handle is integrated into the car as well, and it helps keep that nice, clean, flowing body lines throughout the car. All right, so here we go, we'll open it up and we'll check out the interior. Going into the interior of this car, the one thing that I love about it, and just like the exterior, is that it's very simple. There's nothing in here that doesn't have a purpose. It's all functional, and with that function, I believe, is what makes the car hold up so well over all these years, right? Everything in here is in here for a reason. There's no frivolous buttons, no unnecessary technology, no technology to date the car itself, right? So that's one of the things about this car that I really love, is that as time goes on, this car just seems to get better and better. The only thing in here that really sort of dates it is going to be the stereo system, right? And the stereo itself is pretty good. It's just an older head unit, right? So all you gotta do is take that out, put in your nice doubled in, you get CarPlay, all that, and you instantly have what feels like a modern car with all the amenities. In my car itself, just to sort of bring it up to date a little bit, I've added sort of carbon fiber everywhere that I could in here, on the center console trim, on the window door vent trims, and on sort of the door sills here. And you know, just helps the car bring it up to that modern age, adds a nice little accent to the fully black interior. Beyond that, the materials in this car, amazing. Everything over the 20 plus years that this car has been around is held up fantastically. There's no rattles in the interior at all. We got nice leather here. Everything feels very plush. Door panels are all leather. There's not really any hard plastics anywhere. And everything has held up really well over time. When you get in the car, it feels almost brand new. And it feels like a well-made luxury car at times. And it's very quiet depending on your ride setup or your exhaust setup. And the car can easily be driven everywhere. Plus, when you sit down in here, it really feels like a special place to be, sitting at the cockpit of this car with this amazing, amazing glass window up front with the F1 style cockpit. You can really see everything in front of you, and I mean everything. It literally feels like you're sitting over top the fenders of this car, which makes it an amazing driver's car. So on the car itself, some basic stuff, you guys, right? You have your button to release the trunk here, and you have this to release the gas cap, this to release the frunk, and then over here you have a button to open up the engine compartment over here. We'll go ahead and pop that open when we'll talk about the engine part of this car. Pop open the engine compartment. The car features a C30. It's a 3-liter V6 engine. It's an NA1 model, fixed roof, non-target top. The NA2s came with a 3.2 liter. They all had 300 horsepower, as Japan was under their gentleman's agreement where they didn't make any cars over 300 horsepower. And I think this is the one area of the car that really dates the car the most, besides those stock wheels that you see. Right, you have this extremely potent chassis. It's extremely well balanced, and it's amazing, and it has a really high ceiling of performance bar, right? Except the car only came with this 300 horsepower engine. And that was one of the first things I noticed when I drove the car in stock form, is that it felt extremely docile because of the horsepower. And it's not the horsepower's fault, right? Like 300 horsepower, this engine could feel amazing in a different application. However, in a mid-engine car, with the way this car is balanced, it just feels like the car has no horsepower and it's super slow because of how much faster this chassis wants to go. So on my car, I have a Comptech supercharger. It's highly desirable on this car as it sort of comes with a warranty with the car's legal. And it really, really brings the car up to date with the way it looks, to modern performance standards, and I think it's the perfect amount of horsepower that you need in this car. I think the car can definitely, the chassis can definitely handle way more horsepower than this. I'm making about an extra 100 or so horsepower over stock at around 420-ish. I have the supercharger, I have Comptech headers, test pipes, and an exhaust on this car. All right, you guys, so for the rest of this video, I just kind of want to sit here and talk to you guys about sort of the insight and what the ownership is like after 6 years of having an NSX, and for what it's like to own the JDM Icon or your dream car. Because for me, growing up, this was always the dream car. I think the video that really did it for me was back in the day, I used to watch these like Format 57 videos or something on Vimeo, and they had this one with this white fixed headlight NSX, and they drive it to the Nürburgring, and he puts in this classical symphony music soundtrack in the background, and it just really kind of stuck in my heart for a while. And I remember watching that video like 6 to 7 times before I went to pick this car up and buy it. So I think for many of you guys like me, the question is, do you meet your heroes, or should you meet your heroes? And in the case of the NSX, the answer is yes, definitely yes, 1000% yes. If you are in the opportunity or have the means to be an owner of one of these cars, it's amazing, and it's one of the best car experiences I think is out there. And I'm going to try to let you guys know why. Alright, so the first thing I want to touch base with is this car daily drivable? And the answer to that, very simply, is yes. For the first year or two when I had this car, I kind of drove it everywhere. I would take it to eat dinner every time I went to the store. I went to Target to buy Hot Wheels, like whatever, you know, just to get a haircut, to do anything. I took this car everywhere. And if you don't need the practicality of a non-two-door sports car, then this car is as daily drivable as any other two-door car out there, in my opinion, right? Driving in the inside, this car can either feel very plush, or depending on what you do to it, it can feel more sporty. But the car is very well built. You can sit in this car for long road trips and not notice a thing. When I pop the trunk here, you guys can see there's ample trunk space, and legitimate trunk space, not just trunk space that you get in a sports car or a supercar. This car has a legitimate trunk. The car is very easy to live with. It's daily drivable also in the sense that it's like, can you put miles on this car reliably, right? Because a car's not daily drivable at the end of the day if it's going to break down all the time. And over my 6 years of ownership, I've actually encountered no maintenance problems with this car, right? I've just done spark plugs, oil changes, and that's all that this car has had to do. You're just going to run into your normal things like brake pads and normal wear and tear that you're going to expect on any car when you put miles on it. So the next thing I want to talk to you about is the driving experience. And I'm not going to talk to you guys about the driving characteristics or the handling of the vehicle. I'm sure you guys have already watched plenty of videos by people with much more valid opinions than I have about the way a car drives, the way it handles. I'll just give you guys a quick insight more from my owner's point of view. The first thing that I really noticed when you get behind the wheel of one of these things is that, as someone who's only driven front engine cars before this, you really notice that this is a mid-engine design car. It doesn't handle like any other car you've ever been in, and it feels a lot more planted, and you can definitely tell that that motor is behind you, right? The car flows very nicely. There's no unexpectedness about the handling, right? It's very precise, and you're very aware of where the car is going to go. And I think that's mostly due to the balance of the car, but it's also was a very intriguing and new experience for me as someone who's only driven front engine cars, right? And you can definitely tell that this is a mid-engine vehicle. And it definitely feels special, and it feels a lot different than what it'd be like to be driving a front engine car. So that was definitely the first thing I noticed. The second thing you notice when you're driving this thing is just how low you sit in the car, right? So here I go, I'll sit in the vehicle. And as you can see, when you sit, your ass is maybe 6 inches, 8 inches, depending on how low your car is. Mine's probably maybe a good 10 inches off where the actual ground is right here, as you guys can see. And it just is an amazing driver's experience being this low, this planted. It really just feels like you're sitting on the ground and you're part of the street when you're in this car, and it's a very unique driving experience. Especially when you're on the street, one of the fun things about this car is when you sit and you close the door, you actually sit up and look up at everyone who's driving next to you. I'll show you just how low you guys sit when I pull up next to my M3 over here, which was made in the same era and is considered sort of a small low car. But even that, you're going to be sitting, when you're driving like this, you're going to be sitting below their sort of door handle. And it's just funny because every time you're on the street, every car you pull up next to, you're like this, and they're all looking like this and looking down at you. And it's a very unique and fun experience to be driving this thing on the street. And sort of to build on the uniqueness of that driving experience and how low the car sits, I want to talk about the question, highly debated topic about the NSX is this car a supercar? And I think you first got to start off with is, what do you qualify as a supercar? And for me, all the things that I characterize as being a supercar, this car checks all the boxes. In my opinion, it's not about the speed, it's not about how much horsepower the car has. That doesn't make a supercar. If that was the case, then a brand new Charger Hellcat would be a supercar, or any car that makes 500 plus horsepower would be a supercar, right? But no one ever qualified that as being a supercar. To me, it's about how special the car is, and sort of what I was talking about with that driving experience, with how low you sit, how eventful it feels when you take the car out, is what really solidifies this car as being a true supercar, right? Every time you take this car out, you sit in this driver's seat, you sit in the cockpit as it really feels. You have this amazing glass window where you can see everything in front of you. You sit super low. It feels like you're literally riding on the ground, and this car gets so much attention that everywhere you go, it really feels like an event. And this car gets definitely supercar attention. I've only owned unique cars or cool cars that are cars that people would stare at, from my first car being a fully restored 66 Mustang Fastback, to my ITR, to the M3, to my S2000s, to everything I've owned. They've all been loud, obnoxious, cars that people would look at. However, none of them get looked at or even come close to the amount of attention that you get when you drive an NSX around. And that's one of the things that I loved about this car, is that the attention that you get in this car is amazing, right? It's not the same attention that you would get in like a Ferrari or something. When people see this car, you can tell they're genuinely happy about it, and it genuinely makes their days. Every time I take this car out, I get at least one person who, like, you can tell he gives me like the biggest grin, he gives me a head nod or a huge thumbs up, and like nods his head every single time I drive this car. And it's like I can't really explain it, but it feels like they kind of respect your decision, or they give you like, they're like, hell yeah, man, thank you for taking out your NSX today. And you can tell it definitely makes their day. And the last thing for me that really makes a supercar, adds to that specialness and adds to that unique quality, is the pedigree that an NSX comes with, right? You have your boy here who helped develop the car, right? He sort of put the final stamp on the car. Who cares how little he had to do with the actual car? It doesn't matter. It's all folklore, right? It's just, all that matters is that he test drove the car. You saw the video on YouTube already of him driving it around. And you got that coupled with the fact that this car genuinely was years above its time, right? I believe that this was the first drivable or streetable, daily drivable supercar, and nobody caught up until probably the Audi R8, right? Until the Audi R8, I don't think there was a genuine car out there that was a daily driver that could be classified as a supercar, as a true supercar like the NSX is. And all the other companies were playing catch up. Ferrari, Lamborghini, right? Like Lamborghini didn't really even do it until the Audi took over and made the R8 and put a Lamborghini shell on it. And that's what really makes this car special, right? Is that it was so ahead of its time. And all these other supercar manufacturers had to catch up to it, and it was just a unique car. And it was like, in the namesake itself, it was an experiment. It was a sports car experiment, and it was a very successful one. And everyone sort of played catch up for years until what I think was the Audi R8. And then after the Audi R8, now we have all these cars, and you see people daily driving them around. But honestly, those cars are so easy to drive around. It's easier to drive around a supercar these days than it is to drive around, I don't know, a 20-year-old S2000 or a M3 or something, right? Because they have so many amenities. There's so much technology these days. It's come so far. But bear in mind, there really wasn't anything like an NSX for years until the R8. And all of that combined, the history, the driving experience, how great it looks, how amazing the exhaust sounds on this car, all of that combined, and it's hard pressed to say that this car isn't a supercar. It's not a thoroughbred supercar. All right, and the last thing I want to talk about that really makes owning an NSX a great experience is the ownership and the community around this car, right? Being that the car is such a limited production car and there's so few of them, the community is very close-knit and everyone has really good taste. They're all sort of car guys who sort of like the same cars as you. You go to their houses and they always have, nobody just has this car, they always have 3 or 4 sports cars that they don't drive. This is always their 4th or 5th car. This is never anybody's only car, right? For me, this is my 4th car. That's kind of why it sits around, but everyone always has really good taste. They all love this car. They're all guys willing to spend an absorbent amount of money on what is, at the end of the day, a Honda, right? And one of the fun things about this car is that the ownership, all the other owners, they're always very willing to help you out, give advice. They're all very nice guys. They're all older, I was definitely one of the younger NSX owners, and everyone I had met, they're always in their 40s or 50s and dads, and I was this kid going over to the house trying to buy parts, and we'd always talk it up. And it's always a good time, you know, everyone always has really good taste. There's a lot of things to talk about, and they're all really fun and nice guys, right? And the other thing that's funny about that is, because everyone who has this car, they all kind of sort of enjoy modifying cars, and we like to make them different, is that the community, everyone's a vulture for aftermarket parts, right? As soon as the part is listed, it's sold within 5 minutes if it's a desirable part, right? Parts are very hard to come by. I remember I used to just DM people who weren't even selling anything, and I would just ask them if, you know, hey, if you're ever gonna go sell that hood off your car, if you're gonna sell your fenders, like, let me know and I'll buy them off you. Most of the time people already have 1 to 2 year dibs, or they have their buddy that they know they're gonna sell it to if they ever decide to sell that part. So aftermarket parts are very hard to come by, and people buy them up quickly. That's one of the things about this car that's very special too, is that it's one of the few, if not the only supercar out there where you can really modify it, and there's a lot of aftermarket parts and a lot of things to really look into that you can do to the car as you own it, and it really adds to that ownership experience. And if you enjoy having a car for a long period of time of 5+ years, then it's a lot harder to get bored of it, because there's a lot of things that you can do to the car and a lot of ways to make the car special and even more unique to your liking, right? So to wrap this video up, NSX, amazing car. If you ever get the opportunity to own one, I would say do it. I think the car community in general is starting to respect these special Hondas like the NSX, like the ITR, and eventually the S2000. They're all going to go down as, you know, some of the most well-built, pure driver's cars to ever be put into production. And this car is never going to look bad. Every year I think this car just looks better, especially when cars are getting bigger and the safety regulations and all that is making the cars taller. You know, you're never going to get this classic lines with these proportions, the low roof. You know, it's just not going to exist anymore, right? And the interior on this car, it'll never be dated, right? And most importantly is, no matter how fast cars get, no matter how quick cars get, no matter how much horsepower they have, they won't be able to offer the driving experience that an NSX offers, right? Every time you get in the car, no matter how much the guy next to you is beating you down the light, the cockpit in this car is a much more special place to be, and it's just an amazing experience overall, and that'll never go away. As much time goes on, and as more time goes on, I think it'll become an even more special place to sit and drive. So why am I selling it? I think you have to ask that at the end of this video, right? At the end of the day, I've had this car for 6 years, and it's a really long time for me, right? I've only ever really owned cars for a year or two, and I usually get in and out of them. But this car, for me, when I first initially bought it, I thought it was a keeper, right? I thought this was the car I was going to keep forever, and it's a very tough decision. I've been telling myself I need to sell the car for the past 2 years or so, and I think I just delayed it because A, it's a lot of work, and B, you know, in my heart, it's really hard to let this one go, right? I think when I see this car go, I think I'm gonna genuinely cry about it for a little bit, and it's like breaking up with like a girl that you don't really want to break up with, but you know you have to, and that's what it feels like to have to get rid of this car. But you know, it's been 6 years. It's been an amazing time with this car. I love it. It's everything everyone talks about. It's everything it's ever been said on the internet about this car. It's all true, right? And at the end of the day, right, there's other cars out there that I've also read online are cool and fun cars to own, and I'm not going to be able to own those cars in my position without having to let go of this one, right? So, if you guys made it this far, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This has been my baby for the last 6 years, my 92 NSX. Hope you guys stay tuned. I'm trying to make videos. As you guys can see, I used to make a lot more car videos. I used to do a lot more car meet stuff, and I'm just, you know, trying to get back in the swing of things. So if you guys want to see more, hit that subscribe button, give me a thumbs up, and until next time, peace out.